What can you really learn about someone in just 1 hour? If you ask Arturo, the teenager in our story, he'd probably say, not much. He's visiting his grandpa and he is not thrilled about it. But in this classic short story by Judith Ortiz Cofer, we're going to see how a whole lifetime can unpack itself in just 60 minutes. And it reveals a story that was, well, hiding in plain sight the whole time.
And really, that's the big question this whole story hangs on. It's something our main character, Arturo, feels like he's already got figured out. An hour? Not much can happen. But what actually unfolds, man, it challenges all of us to think again about what 60 minutes is worth. And maybe, just maybe, to think about the people in our lives that we think we know so well. Okay, so let's set the scene. Picture this. On one side, you've got Arturo. He's a pretty typical teenager, probably got his headphones in, just counting down the seconds. And on the other side, his grandfather, his Abuelo, living in a nursing home. Arturo's mom sent him, and she gave him a strict time limit, just 1 hour. You can just feel that clash, right? The restless, get-me-out-of-here energy of a kid versus a place where time feels like it's slowed to a crawl.
And this line right here, it just says everything, doesn't it? I'm doing her a big favor. For him, this isn't a chance to connect with his grandfather. Nope. It's a chore. It's an obligation. You can almost feel that heavy cloud of, I have to do this, hanging over him as he heads into the room. So when he walks in, what he sees just confirms all his assumptions. Yep, there he is, an old man in a bed, scribbling away in a notebook, probably lost in his own little world. And Arturo just kind of sighs and resigns himself to it. This is going to be one long, long hour. And this right here, this is the core conflict of the whole story, laid out perfectly. For Arturo, time is the enemy. It's something he has to get through, something to count down. He's always glancing at his watch. But for his Abuelo, time is a gift. He has time. It's something to be lived in. So when he says to Arturo, you have much time, he's not just talking about the rest of the visit. He's talking about, well, life itself.
And right at that moment, something shifts. To kind of break the awkward silence, Abuelo opens up that notebook. Yep, the same one Arturo had totally written off. And what he starts to read, well, it isn't just some random story. It's a whole life. It's the real heart of what we're talking about today.
And wow, what we find out is that Abuelo's life was anything but simple or straight. As he reads, this whole amazing story just pours out. He started out with these big, bright dreams, He wanted to be a writer, a teacher, and he was good at it. He graduated top of his class, even landed his dream job teaching in a little mountain village. But then, well, life happened. World War II breaks out, he gets drafted, and his whole life takes this massive, unexpected detour.
And just look at this. This picture really captures the peak of that dream, doesn't it? This was him, Abuelo, totally in his element. He was living the exact life he had planned. And it wasn't just teaching them to read and write, He was building something real, inspiring these kids. He calls it a beautiful time in his story, and you can just feel it.
But then came that crushing blow. He gets drafted, but he tries to keep his passion alive. He goes up to his sergeant and says, hey, I can teach the other guys here to read and write. But the Army, they don't see a teacher. They see a problem. They tell him he's too smart for his own good. And what do they assign him to do? Clean latrines. I mean, you can't get a more brutal contrast than that.
And through all of this, he develops this mantra, así es la vida. That's the way life is. It's even what he's titled the story he's writing. But here's the key thing. It's not him giving up. It's not a phrase of defeat. It's a really deep kind of acceptance. It's him recognizing that, hey, life almost never goes according to plan.
But here's where it gets really interesting. As Arturo is listening to this story about acceptance, what's going on in his head is the total opposite. He hears así es la vida, and he's thinking, no way, not for me. Nobody is going to stop me. And that just throws the difference between them into sharp relief. Right? The grandfather who's learned to accept life's twists and turns, and the grandson who is just so sure he can charge right through them.
So Arturo is still kind of wrestling with all this in his head, and then he realizes his hour is almost over. And this, right here, is where the story hits us with its final massive twist. And it's one that completely changes how we see this entire visit. So here's the big question that's been hanging in the air. We've been assuming, just like Arturo, that his Abuelo has been reading from that same notebook he was writing in when he first walked in. We thought he was just lost in the past. But what if that's not what was happening at all? And then, just like that, time's up. The nurse comes in, the hour is over. And for Arturo, you can bet that's a moment of relief. But his Abuelo, he's not done yet. The story he was telling might be over, but the real reason for this visit, that's about to come out.
And this is it. This is the big moment. It's such a simple action, but it's the real climax of this whole story. Abuelo reaches down and he pulls out another notebook, a completely different one, and he hands it to Arturo.
And what's on the cover? In these big, careful letters, Poemas de Arturo. Poems by Arturo. It's just, wow. This whole time, Abuelo wasn't dwelling on his own life story. He was documenting his grandson's. The man Arturo thought was just some out-of-touch old guy was the one person who was really seeing him.
So this was the real story all along. Abuelo's big project, it wasn't about his own past. It was about his grandson's present and future. He saw that same creative spark, that writer's ambition in Arturo that he used to have. So making that book of poems, that wasn't about looking backward. It was about passing the torch. It was his way of saying, your dream is important. Keep going.
And that really leaves us with something to think about, doesn't it? Arturo walked into that room thinking he was doing a favor for some old guy who was just done. But he walked out realizing that same old man saw him better and more clearly than anyone. And it kind of makes you wonder, in our own lives, with how busy we all are, whose story are we looking right at, but not really truly seeing?